Okay, good morning. What I want to do today is a bit of an experiment. I've been doing a lot of research on primitive hunting techniques, and I'm always trying to, to add tools to my toolbox as far as being able to go out there and harvest animals. And I've been coming across over and over again blowguns. I don't know anything about blowguns, but they do interest me. And from what I can gather from my research is that, although they're very popular down south, you can make them out of sugar cane, all sorts of materials. Up here in the North Country in Alberta, indigenous people that I'm aware didn't use blowguns, and there could be a reason for it. There's not a lot of material that would make an ideal rifle type of bore. So I started thinking, what about bark? I'm always experimenting with bark here. In my part of the country, we've really got 4 trees: pine, spruce, fir, and then aspen. So we're very limited to what kind of bark we can use. This is just fir. I've just scraped it down and then torn it off the log. It's good stuff, good material, fairly robust. It's not as good as birch bark, but it's pretty good. And I was thinking, you know what, that might make an ideal platform to make this blowgun. So that's my thing today. I'm going to go out here. I'm going to try to make a blowgun. Okay, so all I've just done here is I've just removed the bark down to this cambium layer, this edible stuff, because it's nice and spongy, and this will be the inside of my bore. And what I want to do is get it thin enough without punching through that it'll roll nicely. Once I get it to that nice thin area, that sweet spot that I want, I'm going to roll it up. I'll pin it in place with a bunch of snare wire. I'll let it dry a little bit, harden up, take shape while I go get some sap to make some pitch glue out of. Let me just show you what I've got going on here. I had a fire going so I can get some coals ready for my glue. Here's the actual bark. I've got it rolled up on this small sapling just to dry out a little bit, and I've got it just lashed in place with these pieces of wire just so it takes its shape. I brought this can from home just so I can make my glue in the fire. I was able to find this piece of sap from a spruce tree, which is a nice sized chunk, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to melt that down, and then I'll mix it with my coals and with these deer droppings that I'll use as a binding agent. So that'll be really good for the glue. I've also got this small piece of squirrel hide, and this is the reason why I take time to skin squirrels, because they don't have a lot of hide on them, but I can cut this into some rawhide and probably get 3 feet of cordage out of it, which will be nice to wrap this thing once I have the glue in place. Okay, this is that one piece of squirrel hide that I had, and if you look at it, it took me about 2 minutes to cut, but I've got 3 feet of strong cordage out of that one piece, so it's well worth taking the time to skin squirrels and then dry their hide, because it's a great resource to have. Okay, so that's the consistency that I want right there, as you can see. So what I'm going to do now is I'm basically just going to paint it on there. So I need to make this so it's waterproof, right? Okay, here, let's see if we can get this on there. And then I've just sealed the end there so that the air can't go through the layers. Okay, I've got most of my pine resin glue applied here. What I'm going to do here is I'm just going to keep it over subtle heat, and I'm just going to keep working it in until it's nice and smooth over all these seams so that no air can go anywhere except for down that tube. I've got all the seams now sealed up with pitch glue, and I've also got those lashings, those squirrel head lashings, secure as well. So this thing's good to go. I experimented with some projectiles. I tried wolf willow berries and rose hips. They're both about 10 millimeters and they fit right in there nicely. But both of them, when they left the barrel, they went like this into the ground. So they were just too heavy and just not aerodynamic enough to catch wind and force their way up to the 10 feet that I want them to go. So what I'm going to try to do is build some darts. I've never seen these darts before in the research I've been doing. Basically, they're a true bushcraft dart because all I'm using is, I always have snare wire with me, so I'm just going to experiment with different sizes of snare wire. I've got a couple of inches right up to 10 inches. And then for fletching on the back, to push them out of the tube, I've got some thistle heads that I found, and I'll just roll them like that and then attach them to my snare wire. And my goal is that I can get a really tight group at 10 feet. So you can see how sharp I can get those just by clipping those on an angle. And then what I plan on doing is just spreading this out as much as I can. I'm going to leave it in its sheath here because that's the continuity that's keeping it together, and I don't have any cordage with me. So I'm just going to throw this in there just like that, spread it out, and we'll see how those things fly. I mean, they might not fly at all, but we'll see. So this is basically the size that I want. So I fired about 30 test shots with all the different sizes. This size here, which is about 8 inches, seemed to stick more often than most. And what I observed also is that when I put the thistle about a third of the way down, it balances better. So when it was at the end, like this, basically what would happen was if I was going past 6 feet, is it would drop like that. And then as I started moving it forward, the balance was on and it would fly straight as an arrow, and almost every time hit that tree. So I'm going to go ahead and produce about 30 of these ones here, and then we'll start working on a tight group. Okay, so the orange on that wall is about 10 feet away, so I'm going to see how tight of a group I can get around that orange and hopefully hit that orange. Boom, gotcha. Always low way. Getting better. That's super impressive. So I was shooting at about 10 feet. I did 3 groupings. Every group I was doing, I was getting a little bit tighter, and I'm just impressed by how well this blowgun's working. It's super short. I mean, look at it's only a foot long, and I'm hitting this group at 10 feet. I could easily, you know, make this thing longer, scale it to whatever scale I want if I had more time. You know, with a little bit of practice, I only fired three groupings. With a bit of practice, I could probably hit 19 out of 20 shots at 10 feet, and that's really good for confidence when it comes to shooting those little birds or going after squirrels. But look at the penetration I'm getting on this stuff. Look at that. I'm at least a centimeter into this wood and into the orange. I'm about 2.5 inches into the orange. So if that represents a little bird or a squirrel, that's a pretty good penetration kill shot as far as I'm concerned. So there it is. That's a Bushcraft blowgun. Made totally of bark, and that I'm aware it's the only one that's ever been made. So I'm really happy with the success of that thing. I'm going to go ahead and practice more with it. I fired basically 3 groupings, and you saw how tight they were. So that's a pretty good time investment, and I think a really good tool to add to the old inventory when it comes to survivability out here doing bushcraft stuff.